fast forward, right? You know, Rex, you are you consider yourself as the godfather of black comedy,
No, not the Godfather. I was no the Bible, the Black
the
Bible, not
Bible.
the God. Hell no, I'm not. No, hell no. I'm just no. Hell no.
Okay, the Bible of black comedy.
You ain't. Okay, be careful, John. You think you slick?
I wasn't trying to be funny with that. I thought that's what you what you called yourself. But I asked you that because there was this recent docu series that came out called Black Comedy America that Vice ended up producing. Chris Spencer was your host of that, as well as a couple other people that co-hosted it. At a certain point, they interviewed the Kings of Comedy, which was with Chris Spencer talking to Cedric, talking to Steve, talking to DL. Now, people that have been watching this platform for some time and that have seen you, we would know that Rexx Garvin has a slight connection, not even slight, has a connection to the Kings of Comedy in terms of when I believe Cedric and Steve first met each other. Now, in that conversation, your name was brought up and they talked about you bombing a certain night. But I think there's some things you want to clarify that over time may have been misconstrued. And a main thing I would say is they try to paint you as if you were like a bad comedian. But you told me on record that you just had a bad night. What is your thoughts about that docu-series, as well as what is your response to the Kings of Comedy, Cedric, Steve, and DL?
That's a loaded question, and I don't want to go all over the place because I'm known for going all over the place. But let me say this. Wow, this is deep because this is the first time in history. This is a history talk right here. There's a book coming out. Michael Williams, the godfather of black comedy. The book writer is doing this. He's talking to all the comedians. I'm kind of spilling a little bit. He's talking to Bill Bellamy, Bob Sumner. I'm the star of the book. I'm just going to come out and say it. Okay, on the Secret Squirrel. That's me. Because and the book author is over 70 years old, and he said, "Man, you know a lot." And everything that I told him, he said other comedians said the same thing. So he's like, "Who are you?" So because I was the MC at the Comedy Act Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, the first black comedy club of its kind. Not LA, not Robin Harris, that's a given. Robin Harris, LA, that's the beginning. That's the first. While you doing what you're doing, Comedy Act is responsible. It was the groundbreaker. Now dig this. I was the house MC, personality. I'm the one that turned Steve Harvey on to black comedy. I'll tell you about that later.
Yep, you mentioned that before. You mentioned that before.
Um, I was at Vuku Ray, 1992. Steve talking about 1989. No, and we're gonna talk about that later too.
Yeah, we got. I want to get your response.
I had a bad night. Now I'm funnier than shit. Now let me tell you about Steve Harvey. This is when Steve was hungry. This is when he had the skinny bebop Bill Cosby picture page haircut with the hole in the middle that you can put a dime in that you can put a dime and a quarter in that middle. And he wasn't an Earthquake, brother. Earthquake was the comedy minister. Earthquake said that Steve Harvey was born with a suit on. No, he wasn't. Steve just started wearing suits till later on. Steve used to wear a button-up shirt with the Scooby-Doo snack cake haircut. Okay, button-up shirt. But was funny. Steve was, to me, he was Richard Pryor. I love Steve so much. I'm a Steve Harvey fan.
Okay.
But 1992, what happened was I turned Steve on to black comedy. When Steve saw me at the Comedy Act Theater, he got inspired when he saw me. He was like, "Damn, if that nigga can do it, what I can do in Texas." So he saw what I was doing. He went to Texas. Steve was doing other people's material. There's a local DJ there by the name of Ryan Cameron, who's Ryan's real big. Ryan could have been a good comedian. If Ryan Cameron stuck with it, he would have been a good funny comedian. He was funny, but Steve Harvey was doing Ryan Cameron stuff. Ryan had a joke about Big Bird doing something, and Steve was doing it. So I'm watching Steve do other people's material at that time. Now Steve was already homemade funny, but that night at Vuku Ray was a nice crowd. It was a beautiful crowd, and man, I came there. And I felt the energy. I was like, oh, shit. Because normally with a guy like me, either I'm funny and I'm funny. If I'm not, it can be comedy hell. Nobody can bomb like Rexx. It's embarrassing almost. I lost girlfriends because of my bombing. Anyway, They come up me to the show when I get off stage. They gone. They all took a cab. It was no Uber back then. They took it. They left. They got back on the bus and shit. But anyway, Steve Harvey did an hour before I came on. He took all the laugh out of the crowd. I mean, he was doing the greatest hits of everybody else's material and shit. 1992, when he had the Scooby-Doo humpback haircut with this button-up shirt. And then by the time I came on, being Rexx, it was like, crowd was like, yeah, whatever, get your ass out. It was horrible. The comedy gods happened to have Cedric there. See, Steve got the story all wrong. I'm going to tell that story later, but Steve tell that story. That's bullshit. Cedric just happened to be there. And man, it was a marriage made in heaven. When Cedric came on that stage, it was like it was meant to be. The comedy gods, but just to watch that come together now. See, with me thinking about it now, but no bitterness, and to see where they are now, that's why I said I'm the Bible. It was meant to be. Check this out. If I had a good show, Cedric and Steve would not be together. If I had a good show, because me and Steve was like this. I'm a Steve Harvey. Me and Steve done had chicken together. We've been to the Waffle House. He talked to my mother.
Right.
I mean, he told my mother, Miss Garvin, your son is the Spike Lee of comedy. He used to call the house all the damn time. Him and Earthquake. I used to hang up on Earthquake. But Steve, man, I mean, he took all the laugh out of the crowd, and it was bad. It was like comedy Vietnam for me. I had on Pampers, man. I was peeing on myself and shit. But it was bad. But the next night I was okay, I kind of got my rhythm together. This is Dallas, Texas, too. But it wasn't like Steve said. Now check this out. That went all over. That hit the comedy circuit. I never forget. After that horrible night, I saw Adele Givens probably 2 months later. Because I used to love Adele Givens, man. She was dating this guy named Tony. They used to ride motorcycles together and shit. Adele didn't know I knew this. Man, me and Adele was cool. Me and her and Jamie Foxx, we did a show in Bloomington, Illinois. We would hug each other. Next thing I knew, I saw Adele. I said, hey, Adele, how you doing? She was like, I said, that damn Steve. Steve talked so bad about me. I had one bad night, and that went all over. You know what? When somebody's saying bad words about you, words are very powerful, man. Don't let nobody ever tell you. Words are powerful. Steve said a lot of bad shit about me. I had a bad night. That's all. I mean, I had a bad night. But it really messed me up. And just recently on that Vice show, that comedy, you know what Cedric finally said at the table? He said, hey, Rexx was hilarious in Atlanta. See, listen to what Cedric said. That's the first time he said that. That meant a lot. What he was saying, hey, that nigga was funny in Atlanta, but in Texas, not here. It's okay. Everybody has a bad night.
So it was a bad night in Texas, and that's
bad night in Texas, but it wasn't my life. I didn't have bad. I'm not a bad comedian. I'm fantastic.
Rexx, you kind of laid it out, and I want to make sure I do my part and ask you a series of questions. To lay it up, we watched the Vice documentary. Steve Harvey, Cedric, DL, mainly Steve Harvey, Cedric, reflected on the time that they met. Yeah. They met and connected after you had a really bad set. Yeah. I guess they bonded over that.
They connected.
Did they kind of like, were they laughing at you together in that moment, or was it like?
No, they didn't know each other.
No, what I'm saying is, could you phrase it as a fact of, you said they wouldn't have got together if I would have had a good night. What made them come together because of your bad night? Can you explain that? Like,
only thing I can say, God put them together. That's all. You can't explain something. That's a divine intervention. That's
meaning, my question is more so like, did Steve kind of like start looking at you differently because you said y'all was cool? So like you had a bad night, then he started getting funny with you.
I think I embarrassed him. But don't forget, Steve is the kind of guy, Steve is almost like that now.
So Rexx, you felt that you like embarrassed Steve because of that performance, and maybe that kind of clarifies why you think they got cool, him and Cedric got cool right after that situation.
Yeah, and it tells you a lot about Steve too. We didn't have to lose a friendship because of a bad night. but maybe that's just the kind of person Steve is. You know, Steve is deep, man. I'm a pure believer that the Steve we see now is a clone. I think that's not Steve. I think Steve is at home where it has real dreadlocks operating Steve outside of his house.
Lord.
That's not because Steve is a character. I mean, that tells you what kind of person he is, man. I mean, Richard Pryor's son was at the Apollo. He was on stage and he was bombing.
Right.
Did you see the look that Steve gave him? That's the look Steve. That's the look Steve gave me, man. When Richard Pryor's son was on stage bombing, the camera shot shows Steve's face. Steve has a look as if you really hurt his feelings bombing. You're not allowed to bomb around Steve. Steve look at you like, what? I done flew you in? Come on, man. I mean, you're not allowed to bomb with Steve. You're not allowed. You're not allowed. But I'm gonna tell you one damn thing. Since I brought them niggas together, Cedric, you need to get me a house, bro. I'm about to get evicted. I'm sorry.
Well, it just makes me, you know, hearing that because I don't want to make it just feel like we gonna bomb on Steve and just, you know, I'm always trying to try to give him the benefit of the doubt. This isn't the first time we heard kind of people have like character questions around Steve. And so Rexx, hearing you say that about Steve and kind of like how you phrase that up, right? I wonder, was that something that he had to do where he had to be kind of particular about who he rolled with? Because remember at the top of the interview, we talked about energy. And I think someone like Steve might even know how energy works. So he's like, I can't be next to the guy that just like had this bad night. So naturally, he might have felt like he needed to diss himself. What are your thoughts around that perspective?
Well, you never know how he personally thought about me. I mean, forget about a comedy night. What's his intent? You know, he's an opportunist, like all of us are. You know, when you're in show business, when you're an opportunist, you got to go for the opportunity. But it's on what level do you go? As a person, you know, he's a person within himself, and then there's a person outside of him. I don't know anything about him inside. I don't know what his motive is. Is he a good person? Is he full of shit? Is he this? Is he that? You don't know. But what I do know is that, damn, that Negro hurt my feelings, and I think by him trying to have a comedy night. Let's go back to the beginning. He's having a comedy night in Texas. You know, he's in it's not his club. He's doing a comedy night in somebody else's club. So he's trying to get a good night going because there's nobody doing this in Texas. He's the first one. See, black comedy at this time is brand new. Keep in mind, this is new. You know, when you are born at the 1980, when you're born at the 1984, or if you're born at the 1989, you don't know. But when you're born later on, you're born into something that's already happening. But when you were there at the beginning of a new happening, it's a mind blow. So Steve was on that level, and this is new. I mean, everybody was there, man, and he had a lot of people to impress. And here comes this guy from Atlanta who sucks that night. So it's embarrassment.
Right.
But the thing about it, though, everybody has a bad night. They just fell on my ass. But I think the comedy gods put that together. I was the person that put it together. It took my ass. Leroy couldn't do it. Frank, Bernie Mac couldn't do it. Jamie Foxx, Martin Lawrence, Bill Bellamy wasn't there to do it. Jamario, Bruce. Nobody was there. I did that. I bought them guys. It was that happened. So it's amazing how that.
So closing out on this night, you know, that it seemed like it was a pivot or a turn of events for everybody involved, including yourself. Did that moment, you think, kind of affected the rest of your like career moving forward? Did it like being real? Like did you allow it in hindsight as you reflect? Did you allow it to become what it might not have should have became?
It had nothing to do with my career. That gossip, that bullshit can't stop my life. There's enough room for everybody. If I'm bad in Texas, I'm fantastic in Atlanta. If I suck in Atlanta, I'm good in New Jersey.
Right.
You know, so Steve's mouth didn't stop my career.
So
See, stand-up comedy wasn't my damn purpose. You know, that's not my purpose. I was just passing through. I'm into a whole nother thing now. I didn't lose shit because that wasn't my dream to be a damn stand-up comedian. I'm a humorous person, okay? And I have other kind of gifts in my own personal house of comedy. So
Yeah.
that didn't stop my life. But what it did though, it told me about people. It taught me about comedy. Comedy is very dramatic and people suck. People are evil. Let me tell you something. If you want to learn about life, get into comedy. You learn the highest peak of drama and you learn about people. Through comedy, through laugh. It's amazing how dramatic and how painful and how cutthroat laughter is. Laughter is a cutthroat business, man.